Hello, everyone, and welcome to our second Moody Talk on emotion regulation. And if you haven't had a chance to watch the first Moody Talk last week, I highly recommend you do, because we talk about what are emotions, what are they there for, and what do they do for us? And, some myths about emotions, like, that toxic masculinity of, men have to hide their emotions because they're supposed to be so strong, those kind of myths. So I highly recommend you go back to that. This week, we are going to talk about my favorite of all time coping skills through DBT, and that's called checking the facts. Okay. One of the things about emotion regulation is that for DBT, they go through all the emotions in the whole section of the DBT handbook. They go through every single emotion and they talk about words that describe it, feelings that you may have. This is what I do in all of the initial Moody Talks. Every single emotion that I talk about, I go through the descriptive words, the biological changes, sensations you may feel when you have these emotions. So if there's some emotion that you really are interested in learning more about, I highly recommend you go back to that Moody Talk on that specific emotion, because it's really important in emotion regulation that you learn your own feelings that you get when you have that emotion, the emotions that are most triggering to you. These are the things you need to know for emotion regulation. And last month I did mindfulness, because that's something that is used throughout the entire DBT workbook. All of the other big tenets of DBT have, mindfulness in it, weaved in it, because we talk a lot about wise mind and how to get into wise mind. So if you haven't seen that Moody Talk last month on mindfulness, I highly recommend that you check that one out too, because it really is a core part of the coping skills that you can use in DBT that are really helpful, especially for emotion regulation. So this week, I am going to be talking about check the facts. This whole coping skill has gotten me through so many situations where I have felt a primary emotion and immediately jumped to a secondary emotion because it feels safer. For example, let's say someone comes up behind you and they say hello, and you get triggered. You're like, oh, I didn't see you back there, and you feel fear. But because you probably have had maybe some childhood, ways of learning your emotions, you may have decided, your brain may have decided that fear is not a comfortable emotion. So it skips to a secondary emotion that feels more comfortable, more safe, more in control. So maybe after you've been scared by that person who walked up behind you, you get angry because that feels more in control. And you may even think, oh, they did that on purpose, right? Your mind, your emotions can set how you feel in a situation, right? Your thoughts. So if you feel fear and you jump to anger, you may, in your mind, subconsciously believe that they did it on purpose, right? Kludgy, right? So that's where checking the facts comes in. Such a great coping skill, okay? So here's how you learn to check the facts. How to check the facts. Ask, what is the emotion I want to change? Right? So what is the emotion that you want to change in the moment, right? Ask, what is the event prompting my emotion? Describe the facts that you observe through your senses. Challenge judgments, absolutes, and black and white descriptions. So this means you are just going into this, what happened in the situation. You're only looking at the facts, not, how you felt during it, not what made you get angry or the fear that you felt. just the facts of the situation. Somebody came up behind you, you may have been working on something, and they said hello, or they said something, you were really into what you were doing, didn't realize they were behind you, and it scared you, and then made you angry, okay? Ask what are my interpretations, thoughts, and assumptions about the event. Think of other possible interpretations. Practice looking at all sides of a situation and all points of view. Test your interpretations and assumptions to see if they fit the facts. Okay, so again, you are looking at the interpretation of that you originally had of the situation. Someone came up behind you, scared you, and now you're angry because you think they maybe did it on purpose. Think of it in another interpretation. You were really, really busy doing something. You were concentrating really hard. And then someone came up behind you and said something to you, maybe hello or whatever. And that pulled you out of your work, and you had no idea that there was somebody around because you were so concentrated on something, right? So it's a different interpretation. You're taking away the fact that the person may have caused the situation and maybe brought into it that, hey, there were things that I was doing that, in that situation, I wasn't really clear about what was going on around me, right? So maybe this person didn't realize that I was so deep in doing something that they didn't realize that they would scare me, right? Ask, am I assuming a threat? This is important. Label the threat. Assess the probability that the threatening event will really occur. Think of as many other possible outcomes as you can. So are you automatically assuming that there was a threat that happened to you because somebody was behind you and scared you, right? Are you assuming that something was going to happen to you? Something bad was going to happen to you? And is this why you felt the secondary emotion, right? The anger, because you are assuming that they were doing this on purpose and that it was, a bad thing that they were doing to you, right? Ask, what's the catastrophe? Imagine the catastrophe really occurring. Imagine coping well with a catastrophe through problem solving, coping ahead, or radical acceptance. And we'll get into some of that stuff. So what's the catastrophe here? Why is your anger so strong? Nothing happened to you that was going to harm you. The catastrophe that you're probably thinking is maybe they were going to hurt you. You have to look at these situations and what you were imagining in the moment. And that really will tell you what your intensity level is and how out of the intensity level it could be based on the situation. So there was no catastrophe, and the catastrophe that could have happened was not probable because most likely you knew this person who was saying hello or whatever, and they aren't going to harm you. They were just literally saying hi to you, right? Ask, does my emotion and or its intensity fit the actual facts? And that's what I was talking about. Check out facts that fit each emotion. So I have a list of different emotions and checking the facts that we'll go through. We'll pick a few. So does my emotion and or the intensity of it actually fit the facts? Okay. So you're angry and you're really angry, like yelling angry. Does that actually fit the situation that's going on in this moment? And again, let's look at the facts. You were working on something and you were intensely working on something. You were concentrating very hard. The person behind you came up to talk to you and said hello, and that scared you, right? End of conversation when it comes to the situation. That is what happened. You were scared. You jumped to anger because of, learning that to do these secondary emotions, that kind of thing. That's what caused you to jump to an emotion that doesn't fit the situation. So that's what checking the facts is. And again, I think it's such a great coping skill to work on, to learn, and to be able to use in the moment. Again, and you don't have to go through all these questions. The question really is, what actually happened in this situation? How am I feeling about the situation now? Uh, does the emotion that I'm feeling right now match the facts of the situation? Pretty straightforward, but it can be hard in the moment. If you can, go back to different situations and practice checking the facts, it becomes easier to use. And I highly recommend trying it out. Here are some examples of emotions that fit the facts. So fear. Fear is the biggest one, I would say. So there's a threat to your life or that of someone you care about. Or there is a threat to your well-being or that of someone you care about. So your life, your well-being, and those actually very much fit fear, right? Anger. An important goal is blocked or a desired activity is interrupted, right? You have anger because something that you were working towards didn't happen, and it got sidelined by someone or something, and you're upset because you wanted this to happen, right? The integrity or status of your social group is, oh my God, offended or threatened. Okay, so you're angry because the social group that you're in, and we all have many different social groups, right? The social group that we happen to be in that situation has caused some sort of turbulence that is negative in your situation, right? So you're angry because this situation, this turbulence has interrupted your socializing, being with your group. Maybe it's making you feel like you can't be a part of that group anymore, and that's angering. Let's see what else. Disgust. Something you are in contact with could poison or contaminate you. So like really disgust is like, like you smell something terrible or someone's done something that's really inappropriate and makes you feel icky. So that's like one for disgust. Envy. Another person or group gets or has things you don't have that you want or need. Makes total sense with envy, right? You're envying that person has something that you don't, right? Jealousy. A very important and desired relationship or object in your life is in danger of being damaged or lost. So you have a really nice friendship with someone, and suddenly there's someone else who comes in and they're spending a lot more time with that person. That's jealousy. You want your friend back. You want to be able to spend more time with your friend, and that's jealousy, right? Love. Loving a person, animal, or object enhances quality of life for you or for those you care about, right? So feeling love. I mean, that's pretty straightforward. Sadness. You have lost something or someone permanently. So that's very appropriate. If you've lost something that's very important to you, or you lost a friendship, or someone that you love very dearly has passed, that is sadness, and it fits the facts. And then finally, guilt. Your own behavior violates your own values or moral code. This is very important because I think a lot of people think of guilt and shame as the same thing, but they are actually two different things. Guilt is when you have done something against your own moral code. Shame is when you've done something against a society's moral code. So they're two very different things, and I highly suggest, if you're very interested in that, going back to shame and guilt those months in my Moody Talks, because it's very important. I get into a lot of the differences between those two. Okay, so that's checking the facts. We're going to make sure that we know all of the situation based on what happened, not how we feel about that. and moving towards figuring out what the appropriate emotion is for that situation. It's helped me so many times because you wouldn't believe how many times I've gone into anger from fear. And that's why I use the example, because it's a very good example of, you know, jumping from something that feels really uncomfortable and you have no control over to something that feels more in control and safer, right? So I hope you enjoyed the talk. We will see you again next week for Moody Talk 3 on emotion regulation. Have a great rest of your week. Bye.